Stevie, thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure to get to meet you and to have the time with you to speak about your life, your production process. There is so
Yeah,
many questions that I want to ask you, but I'll try to be very concise and not go into
all good.
so many digressions.
Nah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Very cool. And so there is two big threads that I want to cover. One is your production and your music, but also like your label. Both of them are very important. Let's start with your production. I have
Sure.
seen a couple of things online about you speaking about death metal. What was the start of your passion for music? Was there a specific genre, and how that progressed into what you do right now?
Yeah, it came from my father for sure. He was really big into his rock, and he always played guitar and had guitars in the house and stuff like that. My uncle was a really good drummer, and there was just music constantly in the house always. So when I grew up, I just always had music on. I was always listening to albums and live recordings and vinyl and stuff like that. And there was always instruments in the house that if I, went to my uncle's place, my grandparents' place, and there
Hmm.
was drum kits there and stuff like that. So naturally, I just grew up with it. Which, as a kid, all I heard for probably the first 10 years of my life was just like Black Sabbath, Deep Purple,
Wow.
all that stuff from my old man. And that's the thing; he didn't just like listen to music; he loved it. He had the live albums and the rare EPs and all that stuff. So that's where I sort of got the detail from as well. Um, but then early on, like very, very early on, I had an older cousin who was 2, 3 years older than me. He was already in high school, but I was in still junior school. And he had older cousins who were like going out night clubbing in Melbourne in like 99, 2000. And
Hmm.
at that time, Melbourne was huge in the rave scene on the global map. We had so much amazing talent coming from Melbourne and on an international scale, and like brands like Wet Music and Welcome and stuff like that. We always had like the best of the best playing in Melbourne. But then, like speaking, like when I met Ben Long and stuff like that, older guys, they were saying like they just wanted to play Melbourne. That's where they wanted to be.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, I would burn CDs with my cousin, and we'd have like burnt CDs of Wet Music from a recording in Melbourne, or we'd have
Wow.
like Carl Cox's the first time he recorded Fact Australia in 2000. He had the first time he used 3 decks and stuff like that. So when I was actually 10, I went and saw Carl Cox he played in a record store in Melbourne, and it was the first time he had like used 3 decks in front of people or something like that. I watched him for 2 hours. Me and my cousin went there. I was 10, he was 12. And then after that, I bought his CD, and then I met him and he signed it. I've still got it here somewhere.
Wow.
Um, so that's it. Like at 10 years old, I was listening to like Devilfish and Carl Cox and all that sort of stuff.
Were your parents?
Which,
No, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, well, that came from Wet Music and Voitech and Willie Tell and all those Simon Digby and shit in Melbourne. Um,
Yeah.
and when I was 9, I was listening to these Wet Music CDs that had like Umek Lanacor and Mammut on there and shit. I was just 9 years old. It was fucking blowing my mind. I didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
And then that led into like Carl Cox and Slinky and Gatecrasher and all that shit too. But that was from like 9, 10 years old. I had those CDs. I didn't have records yet because I was only 10. I had no money, but um, it was always that. And then like the guitar side of things with music and that, it was always there, 100%.
Wow.
But that was my intro to electronic music for sure.
Yeah. And like, were your parents going to concerts or to clubs with you or taking you to places, or you went with your cousin? You were already independently going to.
Yeah, when I was 10, my my auntie took me there with my cousin because she was older, obviously. But yeah, concerts like I went to heaps of rock concerts when I was a kid. Like when I was like 7 or 8, I went and saw ZZ Top and shit like that. Um, Went to concerts with my old man. Not so much like I never really went and saw like live
Mhm.
music as a kid, like to pubs and venues and stuff. But um, I was always just in the room listening to music. I'd just get home from school and I'd have CDs and cassettes and I'd burn everything and I would just listen for hours and just fucking air guitar and air drum or whatever I was doing at 10 years old, Um, yeah, and it just always like I would always make my own playlists and download back then on Napstar and download CDs and make my own set lists and shit like that. I was just obsessed from a young age, very young age.
Very interesting. And from that point on, so that was electronic music already, but it was, I guess, like very different from what you do right now. It was more like house, I guess, techno as well, electronic in general. How
Yeah,
did you progress into industrial techno?
great question. When I was like 15, 16, and I started going to house parties and stuff and having more of an independent social life, like Ministry of Sound was a big thing at my school and stuff. And um, back then they were releasing CDs called Sessions, like Sessions 1, Sessions 2, Sessions 3, the Ministry of Sound annual, which back then was a lot more housey, But by the time we got to like 2006, it got much more electro, not so much like 808 electro, but more modern, like who was it? Like when Switch really started blowing up and was doing remixes for everyone. There was a mixtape called "It's Only a Mixtape" by Dave Churchill and shit like that that was coming out of Ministry of Sound. In the mix by Tigger
Wow.
and Ajax 2005. That was a CD that probably made me want to DJ, like as in because the track list was just fucking wild. It was I've never heard stuff like it.
Yeah.
So that was introduction to like the electro, more modern side of electronic music. And then what was happening was I'd go to all these house parties and the DJ was playing, and already had all those songs. Right, I had them for months. I had found them and downloaded them off forums and LimeWire and shit. But then I had like the session CD would come out or the annual would come out on CD, and everyone would go to the shops and buy it. But I had those tracks for months before they came out, so I knew I had good music.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And then someone literally said, like, "Why don't you DJ?" And then I just said, "Fuck, I've got all the music." And that's how I started. I went and bought a pair of Newmarks. I can't remember what they call SX9s or something like that. And I had
CDJs.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, were they called CDJs? The Newmarks?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a weird name. It was like they had red lights and they had a jog wheel and that, and 2-channel Newmark mixer had some effects on there, and just literally bedroom and just DJing every day. Just I had no idea what I was doing, mind you. I didn't have a
Of
fucking
course.
clue.
Of
I didn't
course.
know what beat matching was. I didn't know like what the original mix was. I just had the music, and I was just fucking pressing buttons and stuff. Um, Naturally, obviously, worked it out, figured it out, started doing house parties, like for 16th birthdays, 18th birthdays, started making money. And then I went and bought like proper sound system, started fucking giving out business cards and shit. And it was good. I was doing house parties and I've
Going
like
pro.
made like a little name. Yeah, yeah. I've made like a little name doing house parties and that. And then by the time I got to 17, I got my first gig at a club in Melbourne at 161 nightclub. I was 17, I think, 2007. And I played after like one of the biggest Melbourne DJs back then, still is. And from there, that just launched me into like the Melbourne club scene, really.
So interesting. And in there, but the time were you playing already industrial or it was more like electro tech house?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot the original question. Yeah, it's, when I was DJing house parties and that, it was electro, like that Ministry of Sound stuff, because that's what like, the house parties wanted. But I was my true love was like hard trance at the time.
Right.
Not hard trance, like it's not even trance. I don't even know what to fucking call it. I'm not going to say hard style either. It was like all the pharmacy stuff with who was on there, like Thilo and Avanti, Space Emphasis, stuff like that, like real proper stuff, Walt, shit like
Hmm.
that. And that was like the biggest love I had for electronic music because it was just hard as it was just nuts. So then like later in the night I'd play that hard style, if you want to call it hard trance. Um, but the thing was when I started playing clubs, it was that harder electro switch, Trevor Lovey sort of style. But what had happened is by the time 2008 came around,
Hmm.
I had Ableton because I used to make bootlegs where I'd put acapellas over other songs. But then when I got Ableton, I could make my own music.
Yeah.
and it was fucking horrible, obviously. But what started happening was I would do these wild remixes, and I got to remix Corn and shit like that. Um, but I started playing at this club weekly, and it was really quiet. There was no one there, but whoever was there would stay and watch me, and they loved it. The crowd would go nuts, right? So the next
Yeah.
week they'd come back and they'd stay open. Next week they'd stay open, and it just sort of built and built and built to the point where everyone was coming at 3 o'clock to watch me close the club, and I was mainly playing mostly my own music, which wasn't even
Okay.
a genre back then. It was nuts,
Wow.
yeah. And then for years after that, I was just making. It was always hard, and it didn't really have a genre, but it was hard. It was like 128 beats back then, and I did it for years. It was my own style. It was my own thing. It was 4/4, but it was my own sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but then by the time we got to like 2012, 2011, where I started getting into like the obvious artists when you sort of get introduced to like Chris Liebing and stuff like that. And I was going back to the older Carl Cox stuff. That was this thing in 2000 and those harder records that led to techno, if you want to say.
Yeah.
But always having that interest in harder music in general. That's how it sort of started getting harder and harder and harder, you know.
Yeah.
But by 2013, my first EP, well, my first proper EP, I had remixes from Joe Farr, Paul Burke, and Myla, um, and Urbano. Urbano's actually shut on Obscure Shape now. So I was always into those
Urbano
harder
is
names.
Luigi, right? From
Yeah, Luigi.
Shadow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
fucking legend.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing
Yes.
production.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like by 2011, 2012, I was finding Urbano, Joe Farr,
Yeah.
Myla, Jay Tyne, Clouds, all the twin turbo stuff that Tigger did, Paul Burke and Ansem. And Green Fetish started around the same time as Maud. And obviously the
Mm.
first few releases of Maud was like Enlek, Ansem, um, Paul Burke, and
UVB
all that
probably.
sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, UVB, absolutely. And all the Fifth Wall stuff. Remember Fifth Wall?
Yeah.
All that wild stuff, man, and that introduced me to like sort of what I'm doing now. You know, that's how it started, basically.
So interesting. And when you look back at the past 10 years, right? So both starting your own label, releasing and kind of finding and crafting your own style, but also like you worked with a lot of artists, including Perk, Rebecca. You released on South London Analog Material as well.
Yeah,
Like, what do you think were the key actions you took and the mindset that you had that led you to have all these collaborations and release on these labels?
good question. How can I explain it? They were my goals. Like I had goals, and
Mm,
I didn't focus on much else. Like I just knew I was going to get on there. Excuse me. I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. I just knew, like, because of I knew how hard I was working. I could see my consistency. I had relationships with these people organically, which is important.
yeah,
And I just knew I'd tick it off the list. With most things I want to do, I sort of know that I'm going to do it. And that's just a mindset, not so much like arrogance and shit like that. But like Ansem, I was speaking to Ansem very early on. And obviously, once he started South London, I just wanted to be on there, you know.
yes,
And naturally, you know, after meeting him and hanging out and having a friendship and getting better at production, you know, things naturally fell into that sort of thing. Similar to
yeah,
Perk, I met Perk many years ago, having an organic relationship with him, getting along. He was playing my music. You know, a lot of things sort of made sense at the times that things happened. Same as Rebecca, like collabing with her. She's been playing my stuff for ages.
yeah.
Um, we finally got to meet properly when she was here, and we started talking, and you know, one thing led to another. So yeah, I think having for me in my situation, I had those specific goals, and I just sort of worked backwards, like what sort of needs to happen to get
For
to
that to
that
happen.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't that specific where I wrote down a list of step by step things, but I just knew, man. Like I'm pretty social, yeah, so I socialize a lot, so that had a big part of it. Not that that got me on the labels, obviously, because if the
Yeah.
music wasn't good,
Of
doesn't
course.
matter who I'm friends with. But you know, I think all that matters. Like, yeah, I don't know. For me, I think all that it's the whole package. It's not just a demo, or
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's everything. Yeah,
you as a person and people like you, I think, and the music is good, like you have better chances to collaborate because people want to work
Yeah,
with you. But do you think, for example, I don't know, let's pick Rebecca, for example, right? So you're living in two different cities. She's living in Europe. You're living in Australia.
yeah,
Were you sending her your promos? That's how she found your music, or
yeah. Yeah, good question. I know what you're saying now. Yeah, look, I'm in Melbourne. Yeah, I'm fucking ages away, so it was harder. It's not harder to break through. Everyone's got an even playing field now with the internet, right? But I couldn't attend like local parties, and I hardly
yeah,
get to see a lot of the acts in my scene because I live so far away. But yeah, it started well, especially with her. She was playing my tunes that she would have got through Green Fetish promo pools or other label like Mindcut and Slam and stuff like that. I'd just reach out and say thanks for supporting and whatever, and then I'd sort of shoot things unreleased back and forth. And this goes
amazing.
for a lot of other people. Once you get that relationship, you start sending some stuff. What do you think of this? And they might test it out for me because fucking I'm in Melbourne and they're playing these big
Yeah,
gigs and stuff. Um, and then naturally, I found for me personally, once some sort of relationship was established, it didn't matter where you lived. You know,
yes,
um, on my experience anyway, it didn't matter if I lived in fucking Timbuktu because if I'm contacting them directly on email or WhatsApp or something, we're shooting each other links. It's just another relationship, like it's just another day in the office type thing.
yeah.
Um,
It's super
but yeah,
important, and for me, it's interesting. Like I also see a lot of people who tend to get stuck saying, "Yeah, no, I want to be in this crowd of people who happens to be whatever city, right, in Berlin." Or
yeah,
I was into hardcore before, so the scene for my crowd was Rotterdam, and everybody was like,
yeah,
"I
for
need to go
sure.
to Rotterdam. If I'm not there,
Yeah,
like I'm never gonna make it." But I think it's also like it's not really true because in the end, we all have access to internet. If you have that, like it takes years to build relationships,
yeah,
and it's interesting when you do, like it happens so like through the internet, so you don't need to be physically in the same location, right?
of course,
That's
especially now,
interesting.
and that's the thing too. Like I've thought about moving to Europe, and me and my wife almost did in like
Mm-hmm.
2019. Then she got pregnant, and obviously COVID hit, so it's
Mm-hmm.
probably better I stayed here. But um, there was a little bit of me at a time where people around me on the same labels, sort of the same level of success, whatever you want to call it, were playing overseas and getting on these labels. And
Yes.
for a lot there, I was in Melbourne just working a normal job, and I'd see this stuff. I'd wake up in the morning, see all this stuff. I'm like, fuck, man, I'm in Melbourne. I'm too far, and I'd sort of blame Melbourne, but I learned very quickly after that was not the case at all. Like I know a lot of people that moved to Berlin and shit and fucking went nowhere.
Yeah. Exactly.
And not just that, it's also a case of like I use like similar to my situation. I don't tour as like he does, say, but say Truncate, right? He's from
Mm-hmm.
America.
Yeah.
He lives there though. He lives in LA. I know there's a scene there and stuff, and there's a circuit in America he could play often and stuff. But yeah, he lives there, loves his life there, family's there, studios there. But he just zips around Europe a couple times a year, Asia, all that sort of stuff. And that reminded me of me. I'm like, well, hang on. I love Melbourne. Family's here, studios here. Obviously, timing of COVID was a bit fucked, but now, you know,
Yeah.
I'm consciously deciding to stay here purposely and just zip over whenever I want. That's a luxury of what we do. Being able to travel from here and
Yeah, for sure.
enjoy it while I'm there. But then when I get back here, I can enjoy the studio and sort of have both.
Yeah, and I think this is like it's liberating when you start like understanding that you can also live your life, especially with your family. You can have like you can be in a place that you want where you want to be because you like the place, you have family there, whatever, and you can still work and be connected with people in other places. It's not a limiting factor necessarily. Is
Absolutely. That yeah, I agree. Yeah.
yeah. I wanted to ask you about the label. So Green Fetish Records. So you had your
Yeah.
first release as Mickey Knox 2013. September 2013, you also start your label.
Yeah.
Um, and I know, I mean, like I read a little bit about the name, like how it came up.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was a combination of things like Green from Green Velvet, actually, like,
Yeah,
amazing
yeah.
artist.
Love it.
And so when you started it, like if you look back, like, is there anything that you wish you knew when you started a label that was a big challenge for you at the start?
Good question. That I wish I knew. Not so much I wish I knew. I think, well, 10 years ago, it's very different climate now.
Hmm.
Um, I wasted so much money on bullshit promo back then. 10 years ago,
That's
yeah,
promotion
go.
agencies. Like when you say promo, bullshit promo is like paying someone to help you promote the record.
Yeah, like like trying to get in magazines for an
Mm,
article just so you can think you're a mag cunt, shit like that.
right.
Um, trying to get in with RA or other platforms, and also even just having promo companies do the mail out for you, right? Um, yeah, I just wasted so much money because it didn't yield the results I thought it was as an inexperienced label owner and a young kid. I'm like, man, I've started a label, I'll send it to him. He'll fucking send it to everyone I've paid him, and all these amazing artists are just going to listen to the music and fucking here we go. It just was not the case. I,
Hmm.
I I think I think along what I've learned, production, DJing, and label, whatever you want to call it, is when I was younger, especially, this is just a lack of experience. I think I thought so many things were really significant, yeah, and I thought those things would really take me to the next level or take the label to the next level, right? It just wasn't the case, and this is huge for production too. I think I found in my own experience, and everyone's different, obviously, that it's been for me, it's been a consistent amount of small wins that turns on the wheel of momentum. You know what I mean? There
Yes.
wasn't that one. Like for example, let's say the first time I had an EP put on Hate Channel, let's say, fucking years ago, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm like, oh, it's a vinyl. It'll go on Hate, 4 tracks. That's 80, 40,000 views, 10,000 views a track. That means 40,000 people will see my Bandcamp link to buy the vinyl. I've got 200. Fuck, we're going to sell out. Like, just watch this, And nothing changed. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
look, and that's got nothing to do with hate. I'm just saying, but so many small things I thought were really significant that
Yes.
would take me or the label to the next level was just bullshit. And I have found now when something big has happened or come along, it's been a series of consistency of just small little wins that keep adding up, that lead to um, certain situations actually taking place. And I
Yeah.
think I'd rather it that way because I think it's more organic.
Yeah. And I love this concept. And I think we all have cognitive biases, like as humans, like sometimes we see someone that we think is successful in what we're trying to do as well. And then we
Yeah,
try to figure out the factors that led to that
yeah.
success, and we attribute it to that video that this person made, whatever. It's almost like we want to find that one factor that makes everything super successful and makes the
The
person
magic
like
sauce.
the magic sauce. Exactly. But I
There's no
agree with
such
you,
thing.
like, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think so. Like, was there like are you did you develop patience yourself over the years, or you were always like patient with these things?
Uh, yeah, I've always been patient. I
Hmm.
think when I was younger, I was just fucking stupid. I think it was more so. I'll be honest. I was probably a bit entitled, yeah, because I had made a name in Melbourne, and I was making good money, and I was playing gigs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh, when I sort of wanted to get out, not get out of Melbourne, but when I started doing like techno and um, started producing and releasing, I thought because I was maybe someone here that I could just transfer over there, or I even thought that, well, I know what I'm doing, so I can just do this. But I actually had no fucking idea, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think learning very quickly by failing really badly early on um, led to me maturing quite quickly and understanding um, a stop fucking comparing yourself to everyone because that's just it's irrelevant, and um, just just focus on what I have to do.
Yes.
Because I think for a little bit I was more so just trying to do everything at once in the pursuit of succeeding whatever I was trying to do. Because I would
Hmm.
wake up and see he was playing there, she was playing here. Oh, he released on that label. I'm like, fuck, hang on a second, but I've been producing for 2 years. I know this person. I know that person. What? How come I'm not on that label? Like I would think like that, yeah, which is the fucking worst mindset you can have. So once I fucked that off and I flipped it round, and I'm like, you know what? Actually, I remember what happened.
Mm,
I sent the demo to can't remember who it was. I think it was Martin Hare, something like that back then.
mhm.
He ran a mad label back then. I can't remember what it was called. And I saw a colleague release on it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like he's done it. I could probably do it. Sent him demos. He's like, yeah, he didn't take them basically.
Mhm.
And my first reaction was like, fucking hell, like, what's going on here? I can't catch a break type like that, thinking like that. But then I realized, I'm like, you know what? Your tracks are shit. They're just not good enough. They're not. They're not good
Your
enough.
tracks in this case, right?
My tracks, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and it was just a simple case of dead set wasn't good enough. Like, I had the wrong attitude. I always had a good work ethic. That was never questionable. But my
Yes.
attitude was wrong. My attitude
Mm,
was wrong. Um, and once I adjusted that, I just fucking got
you,
better. It's that
yeah.
simple.
I want to go deeper into this. Like your attitude,
Let's
meaning,
go.
for example, so uh, you were expecting something. You said that you felt entitled. You had an
Yeah.
expectation that the other person would have to give you something. For example, accept your demos because you are already successful somehow.
Yeah. Like, not entitled, like I walked around like a mad cunt just thinking, I was God's gift. But it was more so,
Mm,
um, I was probably fucking just confused. Because I'm like, well, hang on, how come I didn't get signed? You know, not
right.
realizing, and the truth of it was, I wasn't good enough at production. I didn't know enough about production to realize my music was shit. It
Hmm.
wasn't shit. It was good. It was playable, right? It wasn't a disaster. But now listening back, especially now, when I would verse old demos against like what was coming out on the labels I was sending demos to, I don't blame them. Like it was
Yeah.
the discrepancy in quality was too big, way
Yeah.
too big. Um, and I was a delusional one. You know what I mean? Uh, and I think not so much I was entitled like gimme, gimme. It was more so, yeah. If I send them, I'll get on that label.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're getting rejected or no answer, whatever. Were you taking that personal? I guess like for you was like almost like something is happening to me. Like, were you
Mm.
questioning yourself in that sense?
Not really like me against the world. I wasn't
Mm,
like, I wasn't crying about it, but I was angry. I was like, as I said, I was confused. I'm like, well, why isn't this happening? Which then led me to like look in the mirror and say, hang on a second, like you're sending stuff to labels that are releasing stuff from fucking pros, man. Like,
got it.
you're
Okay.
not good enough. Yeah, yeah. I think that's what it was, and it was the attitude of, um, I might have DJed in Melbourne for a couple of years and played every week at this fucking club or whatever, but it meant nothing in the reality of production or overseas or anything like that. And yeah, I was probably just too arrogant. I was just a fucking idiot,
Yeah.
you know.
And so at some point you were like, okay, let's take a step back. I'm gonna keep my
Mm,
work ethic because that's working. It's productive, but I need to change my
absolutely.
mindset. Like I need to actually, learn more about production, practice more. Like, was it something that someone helped you with, or something that you just like processed yourself?
No, I mean, years ago we didn't have the luxury of like YouTube tutorials and all these amazing platforms that you can have access to your favorite artist or producer. I wish I had that. I would have paid thousands back then. So I didn't have that, which now I'm happy for because it led to my sound and sort of how I do things. But it was more so trial and error. And this is where I learned how lonely production can be. Because back then I'd finish something, I'd get excited. I couldn't test it. I couldn't send it to anyone. Like I had
Yes.
colleagues and stuff, but
Hmm.
it was very confusing. Is it good? Is it not good? Does it sound good? Not that I needed validation to keep moving forward, but I needed some sort of fucking reference or
Feedback. Yeah.
information. Yeah, I had to know, man. Um, and then that's when I more so invested into contacts I had and relationships I had where because probably early on, like 2013 14 when I was still learning techno, let's say, whatever you want to call it, I was maybe more so still like just a label owner, you know
Yes.
um
Hmm.
and like, yeah, someone would remix my track, but obviously I paid them for it and stuff like that. I wasn't respected as a producer or anything like that. So I think naturally over time, I just started using those people around me and like people I'd signed and worked with saying like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Which
Yeah.
helped a lot, absolutely. But no one was sitting there fucking saying,
Hmm.
X, Y, Z. It was hardcore trial and error and just tears.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. And in terms of the label, like now you have some history with the label. Like it's been running for more than 10 years. I mean, close to 10 years actually.
Yeah,
And what has been an effective method for you to reach an audience, to connect with people?
great question. Me personally, I think it's, how can I explain it? I think Green Fetish is very relatable to me. Not everyone knows that Green Fetish is maybe my label, but I
Hmm.
think a lot of people know that it's my label. Um, I think reaching the audience, naturally, you got to put out great music. That's the first and foremost. Otherwise, don't
Yes.
fucking bother. I think the consistency of like, obviously, the quality, I'm very happy with. Um, the like the slogans I've made over the years, the little logos I've made, the merch runs I've done, all those little things. I remember like the first time I went to Amsterdam to ADE, and I was hanging out with certain people, and we're going in the back rooms and guest lists and shit like that. And how many people knew the label was fucking tripping me out.
Yes.
And they'd say like, fucking Hammers, or I'd see a fucking Hammers t-shirt at ADE, or like a Benzene t-shirt and stuff like that. And I was just tripping out, man. I just couldn't believe it. And I think, like those slogans attached to like my character on social media, and then like when I would post stuff and how I deal with people, all sort of just gelled into one.
Hmm.
So when I would contact or send promo directly, it was received well. It was listened to straight away. Feedback was given, which then started helping me get a lot of content to say, look, they're playing this release, they're playing that release. We've charted in Beatport. I had heaps of content to share. Um, that they're basically social proof, I should say.
Yes.
Social proof of that people are playing the songs. The big dogs are playing them. They're getting played at big festivals, big stages. I've got the footage. The artists. I've always been so conscious on the quality, and where that artist is at the time, where they want to go, stuff like that. It's a hard question to answer because it's changed over the years.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, I mean, like from the outside, like what I think from this is that like it takes time to build it, and because you've been putting consistently music out consistently and of good quality, people start resonating with that, and then eventually like people start
Yeah,
sharing it, using the tracks, and the label name spreads. Um, and there was one thing that I've read in one interview you did a couple of years ago, which was someone asked you, "What's next on the label? Are you gonna, change, follow this trend?" And you said something along the lines of, "I don't really care. I just do something that I release and I make stuff that it resonates with me. I don't care about
yeah, for
what's
sure,
trending right now."
absolutely.
You know, I think it's beautiful. Like I love this. It's also very hard. Sometimes you're just listening to feedback from someone else, you're listening to the promoter, you're listening to someone, to the agent, they're telling
Of
you, oh, you
course,
need to do a bit of whatever, you need to do straighter, smoother, faster, whatever. Sometimes it's your own voices in your head that go like, oh no, Stevie, we shouldn't do this, whatever,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah,
never
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
work. How do you isolate yourself from external feedback or internal imaginary audience feedback?
I don't care. It's irrelevant. To
No.
me, it's irrelevant. Like, obviously, there's an aspect where I care. Like, I want people to fucking like my label.
Mm.
Otherwise, there's almost no point. Yeah, but I started the label as a hobby, so it's not a business for me. It's not like a money maker. I fucking love it. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
And how can I explain it? Wait, just ask the question again. My brain just fucking turned off.
No, no. So the question is, how do you prevent
Yeah,
the
that's right.
outside
Sorry.
feedback
Yeah, yeah.
from getting to you?
Yeah, I don't care. Like, and this is going to sound funny, right? See, this can relate to production and to the label, right? Because, like, say now, what's going on with like, say, the genre I'm involved in, right? It's really fast. Rave stabs are going fucking everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. That's fine. And sometimes You know, when all of a sudden all the content you're seeing is just this. Everyone's only playing this. Sometimes it's inviting to naturally feel like, ooh, maybe I could do that. You know, maybe I could roll the dice there. And then same with what I want to put out. Well, this isn't really working. Maybe I should do this. But I think they're just natural thoughts that cross my brain. It's not something premeditated, and I just fuck them off. They just get deleted because it's not me. It's not.
Yeah.
You can't fake it. You know what I mean? You can't fake it, mate.
Mhm.
Like I don't want to deal with someone for 2 months just because they released a track that's in at the moment, and like, and never deal with them again. Let's say, like as I said, I like organic relationships. I like working with people again and again. Um, More so with production, but what I'll say to myself, right? Not that feeling comes often. I want to start making rave stuff or anything, but I'll think like, there's no way. Oh, how can I explain it, man?
Mhm.
No,
I
no,
think
no,
yeah.
it's like producer wise, say I'd be like, yeah, no, Giant Swan wouldn't do that, or Blow-One's not going to go do that, or
Yeah.
it's sort of like like what would Iggy Pop do? You know what I mean? That's how I think. Like
Yeah.
I don't sit there and see fucking Sunil Sharp's going to go start pumping out these rave tunes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but they're the guys I love, man. Like that's how I think. Like
Yeah.
they're just going to keep doing them, and they're going to keep being successful. They're going to keep getting booked. Like Oscar Malero is not going to sit there and start fucking making rave tracks.
Yeah.
He's still going to do his thing, and you know what I mean. Like, and that's what I think of, man. That's exactly. That's just do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, it's beautiful. There's a guy that I know I'm late to the party, but I've come across Tyler, the creator from hip hop. I don't know if you know. You know,
Absolutely, man.
and I just
Absolutely.
discovered him a month ago, and I was so happy. I was
Yeah.
like, "What the fuck is this guy?"
Yeah,
And
man.
for me, he's the example of what you're saying, right? It is there, is expressing something that is very personal, very true, very deep, and he does the best he can to express it. And it's like, fuck the outside world,
Doesn't matter. And that's same as Kendrick Lamar. I'm a huge fan of both those
Right.
guys. Like, how can I explain it? Like, they run their own ship. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what else is happening. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I think of that with some of the guys I just mentioned. Like, they can do whatever they want.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And their fan base and the loyalty will be drawn to that because of the authenticity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but then, even then, if they did dive in a certain sound,
Hmm.
it'd be done that fucking well that it wouldn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. For
Clouds were
sure.
making this stuff years ago, man. But no one else can do it like them. Like they're fucking, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. That's how I think about it.
Yes. And so, a couple of more questions that I wanted to ask you. So, one is about production techniques and tools. Um, I often speak with people who are like, "Oh, I'm not producing music because I don't have the hardware. I don't have enough toys."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you and I briefly spoke about this before at this
yeah,
chat.
yeah, yeah.
You also recorded a masterclass for HoS Sound with that is basically done in the box only. So,
Mm,
what's your take on having to have hardware, and
yeah,
how can a producer actually find their own voice without tools, essentially?
for sure. And look, I sort of covered this in the masterclass a bit too. Like, for the record, I have heaps of hardware. The room's full of it, and I love it. I don't use it that much anymore because in the box is just so much easier for me. Um, Early on, I was like that too, right? When I was saying before, when I was a bit maybe in denial or delusional, I was like, well, hang on, he's got the rhythm.
Right.
He's on this label. He sounds like this. I need that rhythm. Like that's why I'm not sounding like this. And same as if I saw the DFAM or whatever it may have been or modular, I'm like, fuck, that's why. Oh, this makes sense now.
Hmm.
I'm not on this label. I'm not sounding like he or she because I don't have the fucking Euro rack. Um, so I got a dumb cunt. I went and bought it, didn't know how to use it, and I was even worse. I was even more frustrated. Now I can use it all. I've put the time in, but what would I say to them? I would say you definitely don't need it.
Yeah.
100%. I don't care what anyone says. You don't need it. They're luxuries, not essentials. I think. Look, if you want to get into it, that's more than fine. I've got heaps of it. A lot of people prefer it for workflow. That they prefer physical touch with knobs and recording live. I'm the same, right? Rather than clicking a fucking mouse all the time. But that's fine. But if you think you need it, to get a certain sound to progress further, that's bullshit.
Yes.
That's what I think anyway. I think that's bullshit. If you want it because like you know about the circuitry and something and you love that brand and you love that sound and it's going to help you with your workflow and stuff, I'm all for it. But if you're getting it simply because you think you need it to be better or to achieve a goal or an end result, that's fucking total bullshit. Yeah, absolute bullshit, I think, personally.
And on the flip side, what is something that you think can help an artist develop their own voice?
Finish your songs. You have to finish your songs because like if you have, so like let's say you're in the studio for a couple of hours a day, right?
Yeah.
And you got project after project and project, you're having fun, you're progressing, you hit a wall, you come back, you get through it, right? But if you've just got 20 projects on the go and you don't have rendered, finished, or at least drafts of something, 5 minutes long, 6 minutes long, you got no fucking reference point. Like you can't look back to see where you're at 6 months ago.
Yes.
You open up a project from 6 months ago, how do you know if you've progressed or not? Like you don't fucking know. I reckon you have to finish your tracks so you have stepping stones. Everything you finish doesn't need to be released. Everything you finish doesn't need to be amazing. But it's good discipline and habit to fucking finish stuff with anything in general, regardless of production. You got to finish it so you know where you're at. You can use them as your own reference, your own stepping stone. And I think through repetition of finishing music, naturally, if you're finishing songs, song after song after song, you will naturally find what works for you, right? You will naturally feel comfortable with certain ways of doing something, certain tools you've consciously decided to use. That will all lead to your own sound, which will come from trial and error. And steal from every cunt. Take a bit from this video, take a bit from that tutorial, take a bit from, use your reference tracks, and get in there and just fucking do it.
Yes, I love this.
Because I think once you've done it, right, and you build confidence, right, if you've got some confidence as a producer, even though having a creative mind, you're your own worst enemy half the time anyway, right? But if you have the confidence and you say, well, fuck, you know what, I can make a decent tune. You could start sending it to people, right? And you'll be surprised what other people think of your music, right? All of a sudden, you send it to your favorite DJ, he or she plays it, your mind's going to fucking explode, right? Because you can't believe they played it. But that's going to be validation to know that your music can be played with your favorite artist in line with other songs that you like from other people. So if you can see that happen, you just got to keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think
No, go ahead. Sorry.
As I say, to find your voice, you got to get to a point where you're fucking half decent, right?
Yes.
To do that, you got to finish songs and put the time in. There's no shortcuts, right? But once you've done that, if you can get some social proof, real life validation that you've sent it to someone and they've played it out, or even just getting a promo pull back, and your favorite artist downloaded it and left some feedback, like, great track, 10 out of 10, whatever the fuck they say. That's just like the petrol you need, man, to just fucking, and then that's when you'll start finding, I feel, your voice with, what's working out in the real world. What are your favorite artists liking? Who's perceiving it? Where's it working? Where's it not working? Because your voice will change naturally over time,
Yes, that's great. Beautiful. I really love this topic. I think it builds on what you were saying before about like finding momentum, like, stepping stones. Like it's not going to be one thing, one promo, one DJ playing your track that's going to make you anything, just like a series of things that you work on over time. Stevie, this has been great. I'm going to ask you some very fast, quick questions just to end the interview. So one thing that I wanted to ask is like, if you have half a day of your time and you cannot use it to do anything productive, you cannot use it to do music, work on the label, nothing related to work, what would you do?
First off, I'd spend time with my family. I've got a wife and kids, so that would be first, whatever that may entail. Outside of that, like if I was alone and I can't be productive, probably go for a run or go to the gym, and I'd probably catch up with the boys and booze up.
Amazing. I love that.
It'd be family first.
Family first. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And if you could go back in time and meet Stevie, 2012 Stevie. And
Mm.
he's like a producer that wants to make it. Is like hungry for doing music, for doing great music, for sharing the music with the world. What would you tell younger Stevie to encourage them to keep going?
Like, lock yourself in a room and just produce, and never complain about anything. Just fucking do it.
Great.
Just get in there and fucking do Ableton, mate. That's what I'd say.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
one more question. There's a tradition we have almost sound, which is we basically ask any guest a question they want us to ask the next guest. So there's a question for you, of course. But
Yeah,
first
yeah,
of all,
okay.
like, what question would you like us to ask the next guest?
Mm, fuck. I don't know, man. You've got me there, mate.
I,
What
I
will
can
I ask
give,
you to ask the next guest?
I can
Yeah,
share
go,
the
go.
I can share the previous question from the previous guest,
Let's hear it.
which is, what's your purpose with music?
What's my purpose?
Yeah.
Great question. My purpose with music, I just self-expression, to be honest. That's first and foremost. That's my outlet. That's my fucking meditation, whatever you want to call it. But outside of that, where I'm at now, I want it to just inspire people, man. Like, I know that's a
Mhm.
bit fucking cliche and whatever you want to call it, but it's true, man. Like, doing the masterclass and teaching privately, I've been a producer who struggled and was upset and angry and confused, and I didn't have help. I didn't have resources like there is today. So that's why I'm so approachable. So
Mhm.
I'm always willing to talk production and help, because fucking if I had a few tips back in the day from he or she, like, it would have saved me years.
Yes,
So yeah, self-expression first and foremost, and then trying to help other people too.
that's great. Thank you. Any question you want us to ask the next guest?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Fuck. Um, did you cry in the Notebook?
Did you cry in
Did you cry watching the Notebook?
the notebook? Okay.
That's what I want to know.
Okay. I will ask
That's
the
what I want to
question.
fucking know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Stevie, this has been great. Always a pleasure to spend time with you. And thank you for doing this interview, for sharing about your story and your take on music production.
Likewise, mate. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All good, mate. Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording. Okay.